Welcome to the Nate and Dorin podcast. We are professional videographers based in Vancouver, Canada, and we are here to talk about relevant topics within the video and media industry. I'm Nate and I run Nate Dixon Media.
And I'm Dorin, the videographer, solo entrepreneur offering video production services. And today we're going to have a chat with our guest, Caleb Cameron, video producer and freelance video editor. Caleb, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, guys. Pleasure to be here.
Awesome. So you're, Nate, and that's how you got invited on to the podcast. So can you please give us a brief overview of how you know Nate, and how did you get started doing video editing and video producing?
Totally. Well, I know Nate from a place where we both currently work, which is Village Church, based in Surrey, British Columbia. And I've been working there for the past couple of years. I started out as a video media producer, storyteller. My role has kind of evolved. It's changed during COVID. It kind of shifted from mostly storytelling into helping with the services when everything was shut down and locked down. And now I've kind of been regaining my old responsibilities in editing and producing. And I met Nate a few months ago when Nate came onto our staff. And we worked on a few projects together and really enjoyed getting to know him a little bit. And here we are. I guess to tie into your other question, how did I get started in this wide and wacky world of videography? It was definitely not my first plan. It was definitely a backdoor kind of thing. I didn't go to school for video production. I went to school for music production. And growing up, I was a musician with my dad. We would play in church a lot. I really gained an interest in music production and using computers probably around the age of 12. I discovered that, recorded music was more than just a bunch of people sitting in a room, into a tape machine and, you made a record and one, I just had this idea of a recording studio with like billions of instruments. And then somebody showed me GarageBand for the first time and it changed my world. I still remember that. And this guy lent me his laptop and I just stole it from him for like an hour. And I was just learning well, you can do that and you can use plugins. And so that kind of started me on this trajectory. And I would say, looking back now, I did do a lot of video in my teen years. I just really never identified as a videographer. I did a lot, I had one of those DV cams and I was always cutting video for church or different things like that, different little fun projects with friends. So seeing that as a bit of a precursor, I never really dawned on me until looking back. And I think part of that reason why I never identified is that because so much of my identity was built as a musician. And one of my best friends was a videographer. And I always thought, he's the guy with the camera, like the DSLR. Remember the day when your friend first got a DSLR and you were like, whoa, you can do manual stuff. That's so bizarre. We're Steven Spielberg now, and so that I definitely had a bit of this kind of imposter syndrome of I'm not a videographer. And over time, though, I had a passion for film. And that evolved as I got into high school and college, and I started taking online courses in film scoring. So that was really my back door into the video world. I started doing a certificate program in film scoring and sound design for video and games. And that led on to what I did for my college degree, which was music production, but I tried to work in as much film kind of stuff as I could. And then the real turning point for me was when I did an internship in college at a nonprofit organization in California. And the story that led me to that was kind of really tangential. I had this other interest in my life for people affected by disability. And I, at the time, thought I wanted to be a music therapist because I thought I could combine my heart for people and my creative talents in a way that could be really mutually beneficial. And so I was down this path, and there was this organization that helped people with disabilities, but they had a TV and media division. They used to run a TV show back in the day And now they were doing mostly web-based content for fund development and advocacy. And so I was able to gather some of my experience. And at that time, I was starting to do more video projects more seriously. And they brought me on as a intern, and that kind of skyrocketed things. I was learning from people who were working in Hollywood and had TV and film backgrounds, and learned the ropes of Premiere and working on set with pretty high caliber talent and all the expectations of what that's like, and working in a team-based collaborative environment. This was all new things for me. I mean, I was a small town Alberta kid living my dream in Hollywood. Is what it felt like. But it really was instrumental. And I still draw from like a lot of the good lessons of how they ran their video department, even to this day. And I think back quite fondly of that. So one thing led to the next. I might be giving too much of the long story here, but eventually I reached my conclusion of college, and I was like, what am I going to do with my life? And in small town Alberta, it's not very viable to be a film composer. So I thought, I could buy a camera, I could hang my shingle as a freelance videographer, and that's sort of where I got my start.
Wow.
Wow.
That is quite the journey.
Yeah, that's awesome.
It's been an adventure.
So would you say, if you would count from very genesis of you starting video editing for your local church, how many years of video editing would you have if you count all of that?
Well, I probably was editing when I was 12 or 13, cutting DVDs, selling them in the lobby at my dad's.
Man, it counts. It gave you experience
events.
and ideas.
I'm 26 now, so I don't know. Somewhere in there, I've been doing something with video. So it's been a while, but I would say professionally, I've been seriously doing video since 2015, 2016.
Nice. So, I gotta ask, in the background, do you have a Pixar robot? Is that Eva?
Oh yeah, we got Eva over here. We got Wally over here. Wally over here. Wally right here. I'm a Wally collector. That's my thing.
Oh, nice. Yeah. Get like a couple thousand of those, and we'll see you on TLC.
Yes, that's right. I'll become one of those obsessed hoarders in about 50 years. My wife is going to have to slow me down. But we both love collecting Disney things, so it works out really well.
Awesome.
You can have a Wally wall.
And a Winnie the Pooh wall. Yeah, that's what our house is. If you come over, there's just toys everywhere. It's a fun place.
Awesome. Yeah, I love it incorporated in the background there.
That is cool. So, you recently moved, Caleb, and how have you found setting up your home office there?
Yeah, it's been a bit of a process. I've moved a lot in the last couple of years, and so I have this studio console desk that I'm sitting at right now. So it's from the music world. Typically, I have a digital, like a motorized fader thing that sits right here. I got my laptop here right now. I've just been mostly doing video editing, so I've got a double screen thing that serves me a little better. But I've got a 10U rack here with my audio hardware in it, and so it's been good. I will say, just out of camera is like a moving box with a snake pit of cords, so I haven't wired everything in yet. But there's not usually the video gear in here. It's mostly just for editing, but it's been going okay. I think sometimes I have to get down on my back to wire everything in, and I feel I'm a tall guy, so it's a little squishy. So I try to procrastinate the wiring of the desk until I absolutely need it.
Oh man, yeah, tell me about it. I'm using my webcam for the first time on the podcast, so that's why my background's like fake blurred and not making any sense. Because I just sold my apartment, so I had to like constantly like put all my gear away for viewings.
Yeah.
And now I have to find a new place. So I'm kind of like leaving them packed unless I actually have a big enough project where I need them.
Oh, I feel that.
Yeah, so moving and cable management and setting up a new office. Yeah, I know. I'm
Mm.
dreading that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's one of those things that I'm excited when it's gonna be done, but the process of doing it is like,
Mm.
Ah, yes, it's true.
and you use some terms there that I have no idea what equipment that is, but can you explain to me in terms of like, are you actually a music composer? Like, if you
Mm-hmm.
wanted to make a short film, you would be able to make your
Mm-hmm.
own music?
Yeah, yeah, that's correct.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so a lot of the equipment here that I have is music production specific. A couple like of my favorite things. So I've got a Universal Audio Apollo interface that basically is my audio in and out digital audio card. It's a little old now. I'm actually in the process of upgrading my outboard gear to be USB-C compatible. Everything is like Thunderbolt and FireWire that I have here. So I had an old Mac, and I just am recently trying to get into the newer system. One of my favorite things is I have a Blackmagic multi-dock, and as a composer, that's really important because I need fast access to sample libraries, which are recordings of real instruments that I can recall back on my MIDI keyboard, and sometimes they're huge. Like I probably have maybe a terabyte or so of just these audio samples that I can, emulate orchestras or whatever I need to do, and create realistic sounding mock-ups for film scores or things like that. So I have a little collection of those 2.5-inch hard drives that I can just hot swap in. And I was using that for my video production archive as well. I would just, buy a cheap $80 hard drive and fill it up. And it's nice. I can just dock it right here on a clean, organized way.
So wait, if I had a client that requires like original music to be scored, I could reach out to you?
Totally. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome.
I'd love that.
Oh man, last time we worked with someone like that was doing this kind of stuff. Oh man, the most
Mm-hmm.
epic experience ever.
Uh,
Like it's so
Yeah, it
nice
was
to
really
actually,
satisfying.
yeah, to sit down with someone that can produce music, and I'm like explaining like, "Oh, can you like here's one song off of my phone, but I wish it would be
mhm.
more like this." And then they just do it. I'm like, "Oh man, I wish I could do
Yeah.
that."
It is really fun. It's really rewarding to make something sort of ephemeral that when you're sitting back down and you listen to something that you composed, you're like, that never existed before I did it. And sometimes you really can't take much credit for it, I feel like, because sometimes it just happens. Sometimes it's an arduous process. Sometimes I feel like, I don't know, I've tried to like theorize on the percentages of times when it just flows and the percentages of times when I'm just sitting and I write like 30 seconds of something and then I sit on it for 2 weeks and I'm just frustrated because it's either that or that. There's no in between with composing music. It feels like
Mm.
for me,
Mm.
but it is a rewarding process once you look back and you're like, this is something that people can experience, people can understand. You can't see it, but you can feel it, and I somehow had a part in building this, and it's really cool.
Awesome. Yeah, and it's a great storytelling technique using audio.
Yeah.
Goes really hand in hand with video. So the fact that
Mm-hmm.
you can be in control of both of those, oh yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So true.
Definitely. Caleb, what's the newest piece of gear that you have acquired for your editing business?
Mm. Well, I would say I haven't bought a lot of gear in a few years, mostly because I've been working in a place that provides a lot of the equipment that I need.
Hmm.
I'll say a couple of things. One, my last gear purchases that's my favorite, and one that actually is more of a recent addition to the editing side of things. One is my microphone. It's out of frame here. I don't want to move it, but it's
Mm-hmm.
a Sennheiser MKH50 interior dialogue. I guess it's a super cardioid condenser microphone. and it's made by Sennheiser. It's about $1,500, so it's a pricey microphone. And I was skeptical at first. I always wanted to have a really good microphone. It was an investment. And oftentimes I've found with like traditional boom microphones, like the NTG2, a lot of people might be familiar with, or larger shotguns, using them in an interior setting, they sometimes are not as desirable. It's partially due to the way that their polar patterns or their rejection, I'm using the wrong words here, but the slots on the side will interfere with the walls and kind of pick up that extra echo and resonance. You wouldn't think because it's so directional, but something in the shape of those longer microphones just don't bode as well indoors. So I always wanted to try an interior dialogue microphone, which is this short capsule. And I've really been pleased with it. It sounds like I'm listening to a movie. A lot of Hollywood kind of sound mixers will use this microphone. So thankful for that investment.
Yeah, you sound good.
Oh, awesome. I would say on the editing side, probably one of the newest pieces of gear I've acquired is more so an online product that I've been incorporating into my workflow, and it's pretty simple. It's just an audio transcription, Trint.com, and what I've been doing is typically when I'll make a story-based edit or an interview-based edit, I'll do that first pass. The drudged first pass. You've got an hour footage, you got to clog through this thing, and you got to somehow watch all of it. And I've always heard about people who do these paper edits and the transcript edits in the documentary world, or even in the narrative world with Avid, and they'll have them side by side and you can edit the script. And I thought, how cool would that be if I could do that in Premiere? And I know that I think there's like a Parrot Toucan, I can visualize it. I'm not calling it the right name, but there's one that's Simon Says. That's it. That's a newer, more integrated video-friendly transcription software. But I've been using Trint for a few years, and I finally have just harnessed the XML capabilities. It's a bit of a headache. You have to first encode, like if you have multiple clips from your interview, you first need to encode an intermediate file that's going to be time code accurate, that's going to last throughout, that's going to retain your quality. And then you upload a low-res proxy of that. The software will transcribe it all in less than 5 minutes, pretty accurate. Then you can, maybe a little more than 5 minutes. It's fast though, depending how long it is. And I'll go through that, I'll highlight everything. And this last project I was editing, I had multiple people as well, multiple people I was interviewing. So I did that for each of them. And then Trint has this cool feature where you can combine the highlights into a story and then rearrange them. So basically, I'm literally making an old school paper edit. Then I exported an XML, imported that into Premiere, linked up the files to the high-res files, and it chopped everything for me. And that's my first edit. So I reckon I cut down my like a lot of the time I probably will spend on an edit is just that first pass of getting out the junk. And I think also just seeing it visually, understanding the bigger arc of where is this story going, where is this person connecting their thoughts from, sometimes they'll always have that good quote at the end that really should go at the beginning. Now you can kind of see all that. So I don't know, maybe I'm late to the game, but to me, this has been really revelatory. I've just loved this little workaround. So Trint.com, it's a great piece of gear. I should get a sponsorship for that, but
we should get some too.
If I get any, I'll send it your way.
That sounds really cool.
Yeah.
I've never used an app like that, but I could see it coming in handy. Like sometimes when I'm cutting like a sermon and they like say 2 minutes, but then they like, oh, never mind, I'm gonna say that again. And then they repeat it, and then I was like, why did I watch that first pass? If I knew they were gonna take it again, like especially if I wasn't the one filming it, then that would be handy. I could just like skim the script and see, oh, yeah, they're saying they do pretty much the same thing. Chop it up. That's cool.
Totally. I'd recommend giving it a shot sometime.
And how do you spell that website?
It's TRINT.com.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, I've had clients in the past that have, I don't know what they use, but they use something similar, and yeah, it just makes cutting longer segments way faster because you can do a quick keyword search of like, ooh, I remember I liked when they mentioned this word. This was their key point, and then there you go. You already know what your snippet is. You don't have to like scrub through the whole thing.
Totally. Yeah,
So
that's so huge.
So wait, you got this internal mic, like this indoor conversational mic.
Hmm.
Do you also do like voiceover or voice acting?
I don't.
Oh,
No.
okay.
I've done a little like comedy podcasting on the side, but no, I
Yeah.
don't.
Okay. What other services do you provide?
Podcast editing, coincidentally.
Okay.
That's what I was doing just before I hopped on this call with you guys. And it's actually that organization that I interned with way back in the day have kept me on in a remote sort of freelance editing capacity. And they added a podcast a few years ago, and I was able to help them with their editing, and I've been doing that ever since. So yeah, audio editing, like you mentioned, film scoring. I also do audio sweetening services. I did a little TV commercial for the Salvation Army a few months ago, just brushing up the dialogue, removing noise, that type of thing. So yeah, I would say mostly my services nowadays are video editing, audio editing and sweetening, and podcast editing. I'd love to do more music production. I haven't done that as much in the last few years, the odd project, but
That was gonna be my
yeah.
next question. What is your favorite thing? So it's music production?
I would say it's a tricky one. Like I love video editing. I really do. I love video editing that's music focused. I think when I've edited music videos in the past, those have been some of my favorite projects to work on. I just love thinking about video musically. I do also love film composing and music production, but I don't know. Sometimes that takes more out of me than video does in a weird way. Like sometimes I want that to be more of my personal creative passion project, and video can kind of remain more of my work project, so that I've probably experienced seasons of burnout with music production, and I kind of want to guard that a little bit more than I do video. Not that it's not like it's like a child that I don't like as much, but I just kind of like to save my creative energy for that.
Mm-hmm.
And Caleb, I do understand you have a music project that is like on Spotify, right?
Mm-hmm. That's right. Yeah, it's Gradient, spelled Greydient, and it's an ambient electronica project. So I don't know if anybody's familiar with kind of like Nils Fromm. I like that kind of like piano centric with like electric components and kind of dark ambient brooding cinematic. I love making that. Definitely a passion project.
So
great.
Greydient?
Yep, that's correct.
Oh, I gotta look into this.
There's a
I
new
like.
album coming out later this year.
Ooh,
Nice.
awesome.
Stay tuned.
Hey, fun.
Yeah, I've listened to some of that, Caleb, and I like it as like background music. To me, like doing editing where I don't need to listen for anything. So
Nice.
yeah, it's really nice for like just background.
Well, thank
For
you.
me, yeah, it helps me focus.
Oh, that's awesome to hear that.
Do you produce any stuff that you like sell? Like let's say one day you're like, "Ooh, I'm envisioning this soundtrack or this music,"
Mhm.
and then you just compose it and then you put it up as like stock for people to buy.
Mhm.
Do you do that kind of stuff? Or is it
I
always
haven't done
custom made
that.
for a specific project?
Hmm. Recently, it's been mostly custom made
Hmm.
things that I've worked on. Maybe about 5 years ago, I did do a fair bit of that. I I got involved with a music library out of Toronto called Bed Tracks, And I submitted a handful of my tracks to them. And this is a little bit of a different type of library than, say, MusicBed or Artlist, I think is one of their main ones, ArtGrid. It works sort of on the back end of licensing. So MusicBed is more of a front end. You get your license, you're editing a project, you get it at the top, and you kind of say, hey, I'm using this for a 5-minute YouTube video, and or you have a bundle. The back end licensing is often used in nonfiction television quite a bit, where editors will have sort of free reign at these massive catalogs of thousands of tracks. This is more of an old school method even. They'll have like hard drives of these libraries. And then they only will pay for them, and it's probably like the networks that are paying for them, or I'm not sure how the money gets broken down, once the show gets aired. And then it'll get split between like the publishing company and the composer or other different people down the line. So I did that more of as an experiment to see if any traction would come from it. And it actually worked. I had a couple of my songs on, I think there was a Discovery Channel show. There was a show on the W Network. And it's really funny because the song that was used the most was like the most throwaway little thing that took me like an hour to make. It was like this little song called Gorilla Pops, and it's like this little beach, dance kind of thing, like you're sipping your pina colada sitting on a surfboard. But it sounds like a children's breakfast cereal, if that could be a sound. And it's like 30 seconds, but they used it on like a surf kind of themed segment on a TV show. And I remember another time I made like a heavy metal inspired African world fusion song. And this one came because the music library said, hey, we're working on this TV show that they need this really specific type of music, and we need tracks within like a few weeks. And this was back when I was in college and I had time to work on stuff at Blink's notice. So I called my heavy metal guitar player friend, and we just wrote a couple tracks. And it turns out one of them they used on a show called Don't Drive Here as one of the opening segments. And that was a Discovery Channel show. So I was like, this is so cool. I'm just a teenager in my parents' basement, and I've got a couple songs on TV. So I haven't done that in a few years. I really should get back to it. It's a lot of fun. And it takes a long time to see it pay off. I think it was years. And even then, more years before you actually get paid. And when you get paid, it's like very little, because it's just based upon how many seconds is used and whatnot. But still really fun.
Are you familiar with East West Symphonic Choir?
Mm-hmm.
Do you use that?
I have used it. The phonetic thing where you can like put in the text to speech. Yeah, it works pretty good.
That's insane. I've wanted to play with that, but I'm so not musically inclined that I suck at it.
It's fun. It's really fun.
Do you know what I'm talking about, Nate?
Yeah, I think I remember you showing me that.
Yeah.
Because we wanted to say anything you wanted, right?
Yeah. Oh man, because the same concept, like this huge library of like them doing each like syllable or phonetic consonant, whatever, in different tones. Some wacky stuff, but you need to know your stuff like Caleb. I don't, so. But I'm excited that I know someone that does do that.
Can't wait till we can make an epic choral piece together for some epic video. It has to be epic.
I went through a phase where I only listened to like epic movie score, soundtrack stuff.
Oh, we all have.
We've all done that. I still do, I've mellowed
every
out.
drive would feel like so epic, driving to Subway with Dorin for lunch, and it'd be like,
oh, dude.
Oh.
Yeah, Ocean Princess is still my number one. But I've mellowed out a little bit, and I'm listening to like Gregorian chant stuff now.
Hey, that's legit too.
Also you know Gregorian?
Epic. Oh yeah,
like the band.
Gregorian is. Oh, not the band. I'm thinking of like
The
Oh,
musical
like the
style.
original. Oh, okay. You're talking about a band.
Oh yeah, you should check out Gregorian. They're something else. They
Oh,
do like Gregorian chant versions of like modern songs, and it just sounds so
whoa.
like I think you've seen those YouTube videos of like Eminem but played on medieval music. It's that kind of
Mm-hmm.
concept, but a Gregorian chant version.
That's legit.
And
That could be my jam.
some songs are like so different but so interesting. Like
Hmm.
what's that one? Like there's some Metallica songs that just sound so peaceful compared to the
Hmm.
original.
Hmm.
That's so interesting.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Oh, so you say you did do some freelance. Did you get to do like full-time freelance, or was it
Hmm.
always this? Oh yeah. So what would you say was like an important lesson that you learned in that first year of freelance? Is there
Mm.
anything that like stood out to you that you're like, ooh, working for a company, I didn't have to worry about this. Now I'm having to pay
Yeah,
attention to this.
that's a great question. I definitely learned some hard lessons through full-time freelancing.
Hmm.
I came out of college and I didn't really know what I wanted to do with my life. I sort of went into this existential crisis mode for a couple months, and I went to like a bunch of different like I was thinking about going to seminary at the time, or I was thinking about getting a master's degree. So I was like touring around to different schools and I was flailing all about. And eventually I think my mom encouraged me, like, what would you really want to do if you could do anything? Like, just don't think about the pressure. And I thought, well, I always had this dream to just be full-time freelance because I've dabbled. And so she encouraged me and others encouraged me. And I took that leap and I started Love Ethics Films in my little small town of Lacombe, maybe 13,000 people. And there was already like a couple videographers in Lacombe. So it was a pretty competitive market.
Mm.
And I was it was the best of the times and it was the worst of times. I think what I would have liked to tell myself looking back was to have a financial plan for that first year before taking on any risky expenses. I went into debt, that first couple years of business. I was spending more than I was making. I was still living at home, but I was spending more than I was making. And I I made the most money that I ever had doing freelance or from doing like video work, I should say, or audio work. So it felt like a success to me and that I was generating a profit, but
Mm-hmm.
I was still at a loss ultimately. And so I would say I would encourage people entering that first year, make a plan for the slow times. I've found that in this industry, there's this constant cycle where you're either doing the work or you're looking for the work.
Mm-hmm.
And I never like I was it was always feast or famine for me. It was either, I had, 3 gigs and I was like living the life and, buying extra good snacks. Or I had, no gigs for like 3 months. And I wish that I would have thought more about how much money I needed to make. And then I factor that into the quotes that I was giving and think more like a businessman. If anything, I would have encouraged myself, like, hold off on some of the cool stuff, like the vinyl decal for your car, the cool office rental space, which I got and I loved that. And it really helped me feel like I was doing something official and legit. So it's kind of like a mixed thing. It's like I feel like if I would have maybe been more strategic, I probably could have still justified a few of those things that were helping me leverage myself and present myself well. But yeah, I think not being too generous, really evaluating yourself fairly, being confident. I think those are some of the things that I would have loved to go back and do again if I could have.
Definitely. And I think Doran and I have discussed some of those things that we also struggled with in some previous podcast episodes, especially valuing yourself fairly. That can be so hard, especially, feeling imposter syndrome. You're feeling like you need to get that office space to like feel official.
Oh man.
Yeah.
You should have seen.
That stings.
Oh man. Yesterday, I was a post was on the videographer freelance community on Facebook, and the guy asked, exactly that question. Like, when did you feel like, hey, I'm an imposter, I'm not a real videographer? Like, when do you have
Mhm.
like that self-doubt moment? And the comments were just like so relatable and some like ridiculous stories sometimes. Like, oh, when we got together to film a music video, and then they were asking me where the script is, and I was like, oh, like, yeah, you didn't think about making a script. Bingo.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Um. So, what circumstance or like action or factor in your life has contributed most to your success? Would you say?
Hmm. I want to tie that back into what actually got my start in everything, that internship down in California.
Okay.
And more than just that, I mean, that really was something that kind of started the snowball effect for me. But even taking it further back from that, what it really was, because I wasn't even connected with them initially from there. I actually went to a conference that they did a year earlier on just the topic of disability ministry. And I was interested in that at the time. There was no tie into video or anything. It was just something that I was passionate about. And through that conference, I did a lot of networking. Um, I met people that I stayed in touch with for many years. And ultimately, that's where I learned about the internship, and I kind of got my foot in the door, and it helped build some credibility for me in getting into that organization. And that has paid off tenfold. There was an investment for me to go there. It was an unpaid internship. They gave me a stipend for a housing or something, I think. But I mean, the friendships that I built from that led me to meet my wife eventually. So I'm so
Hey,
grateful for that.
nice.
But beyond that too, like the educational component of that was huge. I just learned so much from surrounding myself in a really professional environment. I was doing a lot of guerrilla DIY things throughout my entire life. Just, I was always the guy in the small town who could MacGyver all of the tech, stuff. And so I wasn't used to really working in a team. And it was important to learn some of those like awkward, hard lessons through that environment, but then seeing like, oh, this is why systems are good, or this is why naming conventions are good, or things like that. But then I think that the real payoff professionally has been the professional relationship I built with them was really strong. I wanted to give my best work ethic there. And as a result of that, I've maintained a freelance role with them remotely in Canada ever since. And so the amount of money that I've even made from that one client has, I don't know how many times over, been the investment of what it cost. Even my parents probably paid for a large part of that for me to have that summer in California. That's paid off so much. So I would relate that to others in thinking about success. Find that thing that you're interested in that's maybe not even necessarily video, but it's something you're passionate in. Or if it is video, find the most professional environment, or the something that that you can be generous to, that you can give to, that you can just be a sponge in. um, and then you might just find a lot of payoff from that. You might really stumble into opportunities. And I think, as you guys probably can attest to, I feel like the best clients I've ever had, the best, most sustainable income I've ever had was from relationships that I've built over the years, not advertising, as good as SEO is and marketing and whatever. The best success that I've had was from those types of trickle relationships that are repeat and really scale. So that would be my advice.
That's awesome. And I know a lot of people, it seems like the sentiment online is like very against any sort of free work or unpaid internships.
Mm-hmm.
And like Doran and I have discussed that a lot in the past, like the pros, the cons, is it right, is it wrong?
Mm-hmm.
But that's really awesome to hear that you were able to leverage that networking you did at that convention and turn that into such an awesome opportunity
Mm-hmm.
that is still giving you uh, a valuable that part-time editing income and maintaining those relationships, and even meeting your wife. That's an awesome connection, and glad that really worked out for you.
Yeah, very thankful for all of that.
And actually, when I did that new media design program, one of the final parts of it was to do a 3-week practicum with a company, and I helped out with video for the city of Port Coquitlam. They were looking for kind of an internship thing, so that wasn't paid either, but I got 3 weeks being in City Hall, helping them do videos, doing a little graphic design and stuff. And through connections I made there, I also got to do a lot of cool video projects for them after that. So like I got to film a little video with the mayor, checking in on recycling stuff. I got to actually do other videos for like the district of Maple Ridge, because someone moved from Port Coquitlam to that city and they wanted to still hire me because they remembered me from that internship.
Wow.
So that's a great internship story I have. I didn't meet my wife that way, but so you and the story.
But that's so great. Yeah, I can think of another smaller scale example where I just had a friend of mine who was running this foundation. They were trying to raise money for an accessible playground for their child with disabilities. And I was just getting into video at the time. I didn't have a lot of experience, just bought my GH5, I think. And I offered to make them like a little documentary about it. And that turned out to be a really successful video online. It really did wonders for their Facebook page at the time. And it got around. And the manufacturer of the playground equipment that eventually installed the playground contacted me later and wanted to hire me to do this follow-up piece. And so something that, again, I volunteered for the first time around, gained some really good experience. I made one of the worst mistakes ever that I had a really fun time fixing. I didn't know much about framing. So I framed someone on like the left side of the screen looking off of the left side of the screen. So I literally had to like cut them out and like move them over and did like a bunch of way too much post work to fix that silly mistake. But I learned stuff. And then in the end, it paid off, and I was able to have that feeling, that rewarding feeling of learning things, seeing then this new piece that I made money for, and I had a bunch of new experiences that I was able to pour into that and made a quality piece. So again, yeah, I think you have to be strategic about it because it runs that fine line. You can get taken advantage of when you're a talented person who can do different things. I've experienced that before too. So you have to know when is the right time to do that. For me, it just hit me. Maybe this is not the best advice. Maybe this is just coming from the emotional side of me, but it was the things that I really cared about, like that I was passionate about, that I was going to do anyways, that I could see there was value in it. There was relational value. I knew these relationships I wanted to continue for years to come. Those were actually the projects that did maintain, or the relationships that did bring benefit or did help other people in the long run. I think on some of the others where maybe people were just wanting to use me for a short-term thing that they were boasting as something that was going to give me credit or experience. I haven't maintained those relationships. I probably wouldn't have wanted to. And maybe that's a cynical way to look at it because you never know what might lead to the next opportunity. But it just occurs to me that the ones that did stick, that did pay off, were ones that were really valuable to me. So it's something to think about, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it sounds like you're a very focused and motivated individual, and that's awesome. You're very adaptive and a fast learner. So those are definitely
sometimes.
Yeah. Well, at least in what you're telling us. So those are good traits to have.
Thank you.
How have you adapted to COVID? How has COVID affected your business?
Well, when COVID hit at its peak, I was mostly consumed with my 9-to-5 job. So like I mentioned at the very beginning, that shifted my role completely. We were no longer filming with people in their homes for quite a while. So a lot of the demand for what I was doing within the organization shifted a lot. So it was a stressful time for me. I was working probably as like harder than I was in my career at that point. Again, we were all facing the stress of COVID, and now I'm trying to help our team pivot everything online, and we were learning new things, and there was staffing transitions, and so that was personally stressful. I learned a lot as an editor from that, being kind of thrown into this new process. That was really when I learned about Red cameras, so it was a whole new world for me. So I'm thankful for that. I think personally in my freelancing, it didn't pay off until a few months later. And I've heard this from other people too. I think at first there was a lot of like hesitancy, and a lot of people who were having their income sources were kind of put on pause. Nobody was really spending for that first few months. And then as things slowly sort of regained, demand picked up. For me, what I found was one of my clients, they had some staffing shortages, and coming into their busy season, they were understaffed. And so that meant that I was able to pick up some more editing projects. So I was able to capitalize a little bit on that opportunity. So that's been a good thing. So for me, I haven't experienced a lot of the challenges, short of what we all probably have been experiencing. And in my specific 9-to-5 job, like everyone, trying to navigate, how do we deal with people when a large part of videography is a people-based business, and staying away from people is tricky to do, and you need to get close to them.
Yeah.
How has it impacted you guys?
Which episode is it?
I'll go back to the back catalog.
We need to run all of our podcasts through that transcription, and then you can just like Command F, Control F, type in COVID.
Episode 6, COVID impact and family work-life balance.
There we go. Episode 6.
Yeah, good old episode 6.
Nice.
But basically in a nutshell, it canceled all my projects. And I actually lost my only repeat clients, but it brought new ones. I actually found it as a ramp to launch into a few different directions and a few different clients that are prioritizing video, because they realize like, oh, our customers are not coming in store or in person to chat with us, so we have to reach out to them in video. So for some businesses, they put everything on pause and they're like, we don't need video right now. We're in survival mode. And other businesses are like, ooh, we need video to stay afloat.
That's really encouraging. It's like new life has grown in the areas where things went dormant.
Actually, because now I'm in my 4th year of business as a full-time freelancer. And last year was the COVID year, the first COVID year, and it was my best year, despite sitting like at home for 5 months. And this year is already surpassed that one, and it's still like pandemic stuff. So it worked out, I guess. I can't complain.
That's good. That's encouraging.
And I guess as for me, when COVID hit, I got temporarily laid off. And then a few months later, they're like, actually, you're fully laid off. But it kind of led to some great video experiences. Like I worked for a company that did COVID-safe, socially distanced grad ceremonies. So instead of packing a whole theater full of parents and stuff, they're like, okay, well, let's just set up some cameras at strategic points, have a bunch of like processes to keep everybody separated, and the grad class in their cohorts and everybody safe. And they like did 30-something schools that way, like almost all the North Vancouver school district. And so I got to do a ton of cool video experiences that way. Met a lot of people, made a lot of networking connections that now I've done freelance projects with different people, and learned a lot there as well from others. So you can check out some previous guests that we've interviewed, like Shia or Cole or Pei. Those are all people I met at that company that I only joined, and it kind of only exploded because of COVID, and they were able to pivot so quickly. and do those COVID safe grad ceremonies when everybody's like, well, school's canceled. And they're like, well, what if we did this?
Yeah.
So.
Wow.
Yeah, that was kind of a blessing after that initial
totally
bummer of being laid off.
Yeah.
Rough.
Definitely. That's cool to hear. Really cool.
So, Caleb, do you have a favorite project that you've produced or worked on? Or are they all special in your heart?
Oh. I really try to not hold too dearly to the things I make. I kind of resolved to do that a few years ago. I think because I grew up seeing a lot of musicians, largely in the music community. People would, when I was doing more recording, I would be around people who would become very attached to their art, to their work. And it never, I don't know, it didn't come across to me as the best thing. Like, I would always see the value in finishing, not in like an obsessive, always be closing kind of thing, but just in like, there's a rewarding feeling when you finish something and then you can take what you've learned and then pile it into the next thing. And it kind of helped me deal with some of my perfectionism tendencies, because I would be like almost excited to move on from something, because I knew like, yeah, I kind of messed up that one shot or the lens was smeared, but you know what? I just want to get it done so that I can start getting on to the next thing. So I was always being excited about the next thing. But I think the thing that I look back on as a fond memory was I made a spec commercial for my company. And the whole process of it was this, again, it was another one of these things that I probably shouldn't have spent the money on it at the time. It probably wasn't the best financial investment. It didn't really pay off. But I learned a lot from it. It was a ton of fun. It was around the time when I think one of the second of the newer Star Wars movies was coming out in 2017 or something. And I made this little like boy wakes up on Christmas morning, takes a present under his bed, like Steven Spielberg kind of inspired. And he like creeps out, and then there's this alien spaceship landing while he's like putting a present under the tree for his mom at the middle of the night. And he reaches under the tree and he grabs out a lightsaber and he's going to like defeat the aliens. And then he goes in the backyard and then he's like, there's this alien spaceship coming down. And then the camera breaks and it's like, it was all just in his imagination. And the tagline was, to promote my company, was "Your story is a gift, share it." And so it was kind of this like metaphor of like Christmas and gifts, and this boy is telling this big story to his dog of like the Star Wars themed thing. And so I wrote a Star Wars ripoff soundtrack, and we rented gear, and I rigged up my parents' house with like lighting outside. We'd shot it in the winter too in Alberta. It was like freezing. We made this poor little boy stand outside in his pajamas in like -15 and all this crazy stuff. And it was just so much fun. And the one thing I wanted to do with that project was I wanted to challenge myself to do something that I'd never done before. And that's something that I've often done, and kind of looking back to the, what's the next thing I'm going to do, thing that really motivates me. And I wanted to make a theatrical commercial that would be played in a movie theater before a movie. And I wanted to do a surround sound mix on it. That was like my dream, to have this Christmas commercial played before Star Wars. And so there was a little movie theater in Lacombe here, and I bought, I think it was like $600, and I bought ad space in front of Star Wars when it opened. And me and my friend pulled an all-nighter the night before Star Wars, and we were learning how to make a DCP like film projection file and like a surround sound mix. All this was just like first time trial and error. And we did it. We pulled it off, and it actually was okay. And it's funny because there were some other parts of like the movie theater had like a bunch of technical issues, and it turns out things kind of went a little bit strange with that, and I was pretty disappointed that it didn't quite live up to this ideal that I built in my mind of this most epic ad, but I still got to see it in theaters before Star Wars with my friends, and it was a really valuable experience. So that's probably one of my favorite stories.
Dude, what do you eat for breakfast?
Uh, I don't know,
I
toast
gotta
sometimes.
eat some of that because you are so like you put so much effort into personal projects. Like me and Nate were like what episode 2 we were like reminiscing on like our stuff we did in our childhood. It looks really garbage, but it was done with so much effort and passion, and we're like, what happened
Mm.
to that? And now you're here just
I
like
feel that.
constantly just keeping it up, and I'm like, man, when we started the podcast, we were gonna do stuff that to challenge ourselves that we've never done before.
Oh,
That didn't work
well,
out.
you know what? I don't want to paint an unrealistic view of myself. I was like that a lot more a few years ago. I think, life really took off for me as well, and I had a low season, or I got really discouraged actually after my full-time freelancing. It didn't pan out the way I wanted it to do.
Hmm.
I got depressed for a while, and like I really had a bad outlook, and my creativity went through the floor. And really, it's been the last few years of rebuilding and kind of like allowing myself to to try things again and to be creative. And I think going back to what I was saying earlier, protecting that creative energy for
Hmm.
things that are important to me. So I have done a lot of things over the past number of years, and I was homeschooled too. I'll add that caveat. I had maybe a little extra time on my hands, but it's not always productivity and motivation. I'm a procrastinator. I get discouraged.
Hmm.
So yeah, just I got to add that addendum because I don't like this propagation of these people like you were describing. I love thank you. It's flattering, but it's only been in little spurts in my life when I've been like that.
Hmm.
Mm.
All right. Duly noted.
Well, that's great to hear that you're ramping up that creativity and feeling more comfortable with yourself again. But Caleb, what would you say is currently your greatest challenge, and how do you plan to overcome it?
Hmm, that's a good question. I mean, I think I would honestly maybe just dovetail a little bit on what I just said. I think I kind of look back at some of that as the glory days, when even though I maybe wasn't making the most money in the world, I was having fun and I was trying things and I was taking risks, and I was kind of living on that creative high. And I, I don't think that's sustainable. I don't really think, you even look at YouTubers. Sometimes it seems like they go in these like ebbs and flows of creativity, right? And they'll disappear for a number of months and then they'll come back and they'll have like a sad video and they make it dramatic. But I think there's some truth to that. And I think giving myself permission to have seasons in my creativity, I think has been a really helpful thing. But I think actually it just occurred to me. I think one thing that I'm currently working on that's a big challenge that I want to overcome is making my first actual documentary, like a medium form 20-minute 30-minute documentary. And so I've already filmed maybe about 4 or 5 hours for this project that I started early on when I was getting started. And again, leveraged a lot of those connections from California and relationships, and I was really inspired. And then, like I said, I had that slump. Things kind of were failing in my business, and I got so discouraged on this project. I lost a close friend, and yeah, I just let it go, and I felt like hit a complete roadblock, and I walked away from it for years, and I just sort of have been carrying this feeling of like I can't do it. I just can't do anything with this material. It's not true. Like I know that it's a lie now. I mean, I've been editing for a number of years, producing for a number of years, and I've done a lot of different things. I've hit Command E so many times on Premiere now. I have more confidence and experience that I know I can do something with it. But there's that voice that tells me, oh, you're not going to finish that project because you were depressed, you were discouraged, and you put it in that corner. So just recently, I've actually challenged my wife to help challenge me to get me to do it again. Because I'm on an upswing right now. I'm starting to do more creative projects, and I'm organizing my old files, and I'm uncovering it. And I'm like, you know what, this is all right. And yeah, I think I could do something with this. But next week I'll probably be like, no, I'm not doing this. So that's why I got my wife to keep me accountable. And so that's my big challenge. I really am holding myself to it now, that there's no reason why I can't finish it. I have all that I need. And I think if I could, then I have another one of those really big things that I can say, this wasn't so much like a technical thing that I overcame. It was a personal, emotional thing that I overcame in creativity, to say that I want to get to the other side, to look back on myself and say, look at that. Not to be boastful about it, but just to have that sense of, I don't have to let those feelings of imposter syndrome or discouragement keep me from just finishing or doing something that's actually really important to me. So that's what I'm overcoming right now.
Well said. If you were to recommend investing in something to someone that's starting up doing freelance, and let's just tie it back to video specifically, so someone wants to do videography as their full-time freelance, what would you recommend that they invest in it? I'm not talking about gear necessarily, unless you consider that the first important investment. It could be something else. What would you say to like your friend that says like, hey, I want to start doing video?
Yeah. I would really say invest in experiences where you can offer your services. And like, kind of going back to what I was saying earlier, like I would say invest yourself into those experiences. And then I would say maybe a little different perspective of that, because I think the other part that was really valuable in that was that there were people who could mentor me, teach me things, believe in me. One of the biggest blessings that I had when I was running my freelance company was I rented an office space from a little marketing company, and the owner of that was a really wise dude, and he was very generous and helpful and supportive of me, gave me leads, believed in me, helped me even do other things than video, like help me with copywriting projects. I've never done copywriting professionally, but I had creative writing experience, so he threw some stuff at me and believed in me. And having people that, believe in you in your corner makes such a huge difference. They'll, build your confidence, give you that experience. And so it's a hard thing to kind of talk about investing in that, but I think it is an investment in sometimes building those relationships. So I would say that would be where I would go as a beginner. Invest in those, find those people, go to those like business meetup groups.
One thing that massively helped me when I started in my full-time freelance, although I already had like 6 years of experience working for a company, was there's this BC's Professional Videographer Association. So I like went to a meeting with other videographers that were doing freelance for like tens of years, right? And I thought like it's so weird for me to like meet like my competition technically, like
Right.
what's all this about? And it was actually a great environment to learn from each other, discuss common issues and topics like, okay, how do we price? What's fair for the industry? What's, how do you, this is a challenge I had in one of my clients. How would you guys go about it? And it was like completely opposite of what I expected. I learned a lot. I was encouraged a lot, and I got opportunities off of that too. So yeah, I can
that's
definitely
huge.
resonate with that one. Yeah.
Yep. So important.
Nice. That's great advice. Caleb, I've got a question for you.
Okay.
Okay. So
Hit me.
All right. What is your 5 to 10 year plan going forward from here? Where do you want to be? Where's Caleb Cameron? What's he doing?
Well, he's going to have that documentary done.
Yes.
In hopefully less than a year. But other than that, I would love to really be a freelance editor full time, or maybe something a little bit more than that. I'm not sure. But I think one thing I really realized over the past few years is that editing is my jam. I love it. And I've heard a lot of videographers say like, oh, editing, man, it's I want to be shooting. I want, and I've really analyzed, like, why do I feel this way? Like, why am I kind of like the opposite of that? One theory I have was when I was young, I would play a lot of gigs with my dad. And I don't know how many times we've lugged music equipment, like the full PA and all the band gear, a billion times in and out of our basement. And I think there's just this like part of me that's triggered every time I have to like load in and out gear. And it's like, I always end up feeling like sore from like holding a camera really stiff. And I'm just like, I'm too old for this, huh? So I think maybe, and I'm like, well, but Caleb, that sounds like you're really lazy and you just want to like sit and click. But I don't know. For me, it is more than that. And I think it also is tied to music. I love, like, I've been working in nonlinear apps and software for years now, whether it's music production, really is kind of similar in a lot of ways to editing video, the way you work in timelines and create story arcs and tell emotional stories. So what I've learned through all this is I love editing. I would love to become a specialized editor and kind of niche my way into different types of higher tier work, whether that's higher level commercial work, or I'd love to do narrative work, maybe some narrative comedy. I really love comedy editing. So if I could, I would love to do that, to kind of work my way into being an editor that people can call on.
Awesome. Hey, when you get that documentary done, reach out to us and we'll do a follow-up episode.
All right, I will.
Lots of questions on all the inner workings of making a documentary.
Definitely.
So would you, like, how happy are you with your current video editing rig? You happy? Or you think there's room for some upgrades?
There's room for some upgrades.
What would be like 2 things that is like on your list, like, oh, this is the next thing that I got to do? Like, I got to get more RAM, or like a RAID server for storing stuff, or what would you need?
Definitely a server. I'm actually, my fall project is to build a NAS. So I want to consolidate all of my old archive projects. I love that some of these new NASs can like cache things faster, and with the speeds of like Ethernet nowadays, working like on a local network, it's impressive. I haven't really experienced this, but from what I see, people are editing up to 4K even just off of a network. So I would love to build that infrastructure. I'm a big organization geek. I just love, that's another reason why I love editing, because I love being organized, and sometimes to my demise probably. But so yeah, definitely a NAS. And this might be an unpopular desire, but I really want Media Composer, Avid Media Composer. I want a license of it. It's the Hollywood standard video editing software, and I see like a lot of I often heard people give advice. You kind of think about the person that you want to be. What are they doing? What does their life look like? What are the tools they use? And while there is a lot more people using Premiere or even Final Cut in some instances, or actually I would say even more so Resolve nowadays, it's kind of being the one-stop shop. For that higher level stuff, people are still using Avid. And I've dabbled with Avid, like Avid First and stuff like that. And I kind of think it's ridiculous, because I do think that the other softwares are more efficient, and they're more modern thinking, and there's some old ways of editing that you don't need to hold on to. It's kind of like Pro Tools. I'm not a big fan of Pro Tools in the audio world either. But I just know that it's going to be a tool that I'm going to need someday to get the gig that I really want to get. And so I just want to get to use it for a project or buy a license and have that be a service that I can offer. Because I think that would be one of those things that could open up opportunity.
Nice. Cool.
That is very cool, Caleb. Thank you for sharing that. So if you get Avid Media Composer and you have your NAS set up, then you'll pretty much be set, eh?
I think so. I think, yes. Maybe. I'm set for life.
He'll be ready for that documentary.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Also, can I throw in one more? Yeah. I would like a Flanders color grading screen, I think. Maybe. I know that's a lot to ask for. I feel like you guys are Santa and I'm putting in my wish list. You're gonna buy this for me. Maybe.
That's the beauty of freelance. You're your own boss, so yeah. Go for it.
I think for your NAS you should have a custom Wally enclosure. So it's like the box, his belly is like the enclosure, the base.
Yes. Yeah, I could do that.
Get that happening.
Great idea, Nate.
Yeah. So, Dorin, is there any other questions you've got?
Not that have already been answered. I don't know. You working on any big projects currently?
Just a couple average size projects, some story-based editing.
Do you do international work? Like, do you have clients from the U.S. or from like other countries?
I do, yeah. I have clients in the U.S. No other countries than that, but it is nice working for clients in the U.S. The dollar exchange is good. The one thing that I learned the hard way through that is like the taxes and the accounting side of things is a little bit more complicated once you start making a certain amount. So it's just good to do your due diligence once you start doing that. But I think the other thing that COVID has kind of been a blessing is this realization that you can work anywhere. I mean, that's partially I'm in Alberta. Nate, you're in BC, where the main office is for the church we work at. So I'm currently in a fully remote capacity, and I don't know if it wasn't for COVID that would be possible. So I'm grateful for that, and just being able to think bigger than I think I probably thought when I was getting started in all of this.
You're in Alberta? Which city?
That's right. Lacombe. I'm back in Lacombe.
Oh, right. You said that. Yeah.
Shout out to Lacombe.
Yeah, I was in Calgary recently, and Calgary's nice.
Calgary's a good city. Yeah. I would live in Calgary.
Definitely more affordable than Vancouver.
Don't get me started.
Oh, here I go. That's another episode. Wait, for the U.S. clients, do you charge them in U.S. dollars?
I do, and I have a U.S. bank account.
I've heard other videographers say they do that, so
yeah.
I had a few U.S. clients, but I charged in Canadian. But it was weird, like they're from the U.S., but they have a branch in Canada, so
that's a little bit trickier, yeah.
Because it was the Canadian branch reaching out to me, but the payroll was from the U.S., so I was like, I don't know.
Right, that's complicated.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is it legal for you to, let's say you have your US bank account, you buy like Bitcoin or something with all your American money, and then you withdraw it with like, or send it to like a Canadian Bitcoin address and like withdraw it as Canadian money?
I don't know enough about crypto. I really want to get into that, but I do something similar. Like I just have with my bank, they have a sister bank in the States, and I can just transfer freely back and forth without losing anything. So
nice.
It works out really well.
That's cool.
Yeah. I mean, I think I got like wire transfers each time for that. Because I think the issue is if you're operating in the States as a non-U.S. citizen. But if they're in the States and they're paying you, but you're doing the editing remotely from Canada,
that's correct.
I think that's fine.
Yep. Yeah, that's right. And every organization is a little bit different in how they handle that, their own accounting. I've had to fill out like some different forms for one organization that has to account for certain things or to report on exemptions and things like that. But these are all the hard lessons that the business person lessons that it doesn't sound very glamorous, but it's wow, does it ever pay off? Like, when you want this to be your full-time thing, when you want this to be, you know, that was my dream when my mom asked me, what do you want to do? That wasn't the first thought that occurred to me, is, you know, how do I make this viable? How do I make this long-term? How do I pay taxes? But I don't know, maybe you have to learn that the hard way. But it's been very valuable to learn as much as I can about those things.
Actually, I'm curious about one thing. How do you go about your pricing model, especially for audio work? Do you take like an advance payment? Do you give like incremental progress, like, hey, we need to make a 3-minute score or music clip for this, let's say a Kickstarter video or a promo video, a trailer, a movie trailer, a documentary trailer? Do you like work out the first minute in all of its complexity and do milestones like that? Or do you do like a very basic, like, okay, this is like the very ambient stuff and we'll add on more depth to it? Well, what's that process like? I'm very curious.
Yeah. Are you thinking of like the pricing of that or just the process?
Both pricing and process, because they go hand in hand. Like
Right.
what like I don't know, that's at least what I envision I would do. The
Yeah.
one of those two.
Well, you are right about like the first minute kind of syndrome. And maybe not every composer is like this, but for me, I work linearly, so I'll usually start at the beginning and kind of flesh things out as fully as I can imagine them at that point for that first minute, and that usually will set the template for everything. And what I've found is, and this then ties into the finance of it, I kind of know how long it takes me to do that. And like I was saying earlier, sometimes it's either I'm going to have creativity burst and I'm going to do it in one sitting, or it's going to take me the same amount of time over a 2-week period. And if I have a client with a deadline, that might mean I'm doing an all-nighter, but you know, sometimes you don't have that luxury. So I've been able to fairly estimate, you know, to myself, this is fair, that I can predict it's going to take me 4 to 5 hours to write 1 minute of music. So then I can use that to work backwards from how long the piece is going to be or how long the video is going to be, and I can quote them based upon that. Or if I know that they want, you know, maybe special, if they have a bigger budget, maybe I'll work in some like live musicians into the budget as well. So it's a little bit of a back and forth thing. It's a little bit of I have a standard rate. I can estimate really well how long it takes me to do it. I can be pretty confident in that, or I can judge it based upon how much money there. And sometimes that's it. They'll just say, hey, look, I've got $200. Do you want to sweeten the audio mix on this little 1 minute piece? And then I can say yes or no.
But if you're composing something from scratch, do you start working on that just off of a email, or do you like get an advance payment?
That's one thing that I probably would need to sign a contract for. Like, I would want to make sure that expectations are clear. Unless it was, I don't know, unless I felt like there was a good reason for me to do some spec work on it. If I really wanted to garner that relationship with the director or something, I would definitely consider that as well. It's conditional.
Come to think of it now, that second option that I was saying, where you like do just a general ambient track for the whole thing and then you keep adding on, that's actually the equivalent of showing raw footage to a client and expecting them to visualize
graded or anything.
Yeah, that's true.
So that doesn't work.
Yeah.
Never mind.
Yeah, it's a bit of a risk.
Unless your client is music savvy and can envision it. Yeah.
Very true.
Yeah. Well, thank you for entertaining that curiosity for me.
Oh, of course. My pleasure.
Now, Caleb, how can other people find you and be involved or hire you for any of your services?
Totally. You can find me online at meetcaleb.com. That's Caleb, C-A-L-E-B, meet, M-E-E-T, meetcaleb.com. And you can connect with me on there.
Awesome.
Nice.
And that'll be a portal for anything music or video related?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've sort of centralized things, or the one thing that might not be on there is Gradient, which I shouted out earlier if you want to dig into some ambient electronica.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Are you active on any social media? Like, do you have a YouTube channel or a Facebook page that you're like posting projects to?
I don't. No, I kind of went anti-social media a couple of years ago, and I've been slowly weaning myself and moving myself off of all platforms, which is a counterintuitive thing to do as a freelancer. But and that's, again, largely I kind of go back to those relationships that have kind of funneled into my work. So I'm not too worried about that.
Okay.
But I'm not very social, sadly.
Okay. Well,
but you can email me. I'm an old school guy. Send me an email.
Yeah.
I'll talk to you.
All right. That's awesome.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, that's a wrap for today. Unless, Caleb, you have any last question or thought or thing you want to get in before we wrap up?
No.
Right.
Just really thankful, guys. It's been an honor to chat with you.
Yeah. And thank you very much for making time to be on the podcast. We definitely appreciate you coming on board and sharing all your experience with us. And thank you for watching or listening to this episode of the Nate and Dorin podcast. Please leave a comment or a message about what topics you would like us to discuss, and we'll make sure we get around to it.
And be sure to subscribe to not miss an episode of the Nate and Dorin podcast. You can find us on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or whatever you use to listen to podcasts. This has been Nate and Dorin with our guest Caleb. Thanks, Caleb, for being on with us, and thank you for watching and listening, everybody. Cheers.